and substantial innovation, right? So
yeah, but
so in that sense,
Amazon is the exception, I would say. It's like they're not unusual. Most people will not do what Amazon is doing, but many of the companies who would say, yeah, we're moving to this direction and we have so many new potential options in the future, and can they really deliver what they're promising? I don't know. Maybe they do believe that they will, but in many cases they don't.
But so I completely agree with you that Amazon is the exception, but should it be the exception? Shouldn't more companies try and strive to be like Amazon, right? And that comes with costs because Amazon hasn't delivered substantial profits for much of their history, right? They reinvested all of their profits. That's not what the average company does. Any company could invest way more, in any profitable company could invest way more in innovation, but they don't, and they don't try to be like Amazon. Should they be to try to be like Amazon? Yes. And just to add to your point, yes, Amazon is the exception, but we've seen, coming out of our study, we've seen companies that are actually very good at that, where you wouldn't expect them to be. So there's a few German, like large Mittelstand companies, machine manufacturers, where you wouldn't think this is what they're doing. You wouldn't think they're doing the Amazon model, but they've exactly done that in some different ways to what Amazon does it, and more kind of through an M&A route rather than a venture building route, the way Amazon often does it. But there are companies that don't fit the kind of the perfect image of Amazon, and still are good at innovating for the long term.
Yeah, I think that I just heard that Jeff Bezos, when he just started, when they were only a small bookstore, he said that it's all for the long run. He's always looking to the long run and not to the short run. And you see it's all through his, I think 23 years. Now it's his last year, I think, in Amazon this year, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
And you see that is going. But going back to the beginning, you said that there are so many companies who are sure that they don't need to innovate. So I would love to hear who is so sure of himself that would say, I don't need it at all.
Yeah, and this is companies across, I would say quite a few industries, and of course, there's this Aristotle quote, right, that goes something. How does it go? I'm going to completely butcher that here, but it goes something along the lines of, "Who the gods want to destroy, they send 40 years of good fortune," or something like that, right? And this is kind of the story. If you're a very successful company, of course you're gonna think you can continue doing what you have done, and you'll just be fine, even though there's many examples of companies where that hasn't been the case. And as a matter of fact, there's a lot of data that suggests that kind of the lifespan for business models is getting ever shorter, right? If you look, for example, at the average lifespan on companies on the S&P 500, 40 years ago, that was 40 years. Today, that's 20 years. In 5 years' time, it's expected to be 15 years, right? This should be an eye-opener.
After COVID, I think it's already 15 years as I see it, but it accelerated everything. And I think that this is another aspect of what's going on to be in this business, impacting what's going on right now in the world in general, right?
No, for sure.
Yeah. So how could corporates create sustainable growth if they're so not willing to invest again in themselves to see the long run, to change the way that they're doing things? So how could they really create something which is sustainable for them?
If they're not willing to invest, they can't. I think that's the short
That's
answer.
a good thing. You should be willing.
You should be willing to invest. And I think the kind of way it starts is that recognition that even if you have a very successful business model going for you, all business models go through kind of the normal business model life cycles, right? And all business models start with an idea and growth and inception, and then at some point you get to maturity, but at some point you always will face decline, and that has happened to basically every business model that we've seen. And there's of course a few exceptions, right? But generally speaking, that's what happens, and those life cycles get shorter. So as a company, you need to appreciate that, and you need to kind of think of yourself maybe as more than just one business model. You need to think of yourself as a portfolio of business models that start at different points in time, and that you have to reinvent as you go along, or introduce new ones, right? So so that's really at the root of it. And then when you think about what you can do to introduce new business models and kind of keep reinventing yourself as a company, that's when you land at a few options that you have in kind of your toolbox, in your innovation toolbox, right? And we think the most promising ones that you can leverage to really create a significant impact, significant operational impact, really create new business models that you depend on, are M&A on the one hand, and corporate venture building, which is what we do at Stryber.
Yeah.